Okay, now here we are with a billet in the forge. You can see a lot of dragon's breath coming out the front. That means we've got a reducing fire. That's good and hot. It's been soaking for several minutes at a thorough welding heat. And this is without any flux. Notice I pull it right out of the forge and you get a good press on it all over. Just try to crush everything shut right off the bat so no oxygen can get in there on the sides of the seams. And what I like to do a lot is right after that initial weld, brush it off hard there with a wire brush, especially off the sides, and give it a little dusting of borax down the sides of the weld seams. Put it back in, get a second heat, and actually do that second weld wet with borax, which helps me close the very slight open welds at the edges of the billet open. Then I don't have a whole lot of black lines to grind out of the sides later on down the road. Okay, here's the second weld. You can see it's really steaming from the borax now. You can see right in the center that weld bead still on there. Speeding up the press a little bit. Here we are with another heat. Way fast. Now before I took that run down the side in the drawing dies there, I had in between shots here gone and ground that weld bead off of the side hot with an angle grinder. That way I didn't push it into the billet. I've gotten it down to an inch thick, somewhere from an inch to 3/4 thick, at which point the press stops being as economical as the hammer for drawing it out further. So here I am on my 50-pound little giant with fairly mild drawing dies, stretching it out more, speeding the hammer up until I get out to kind of the desired length that I'm going to be able to chop it up into however many pieces I want to restack it to. Now I'm flattening it in the dies, trying to get a nice straight side on it. One at a time I'll get it only so flat in the dies and I have to tune it up with a hammer a bit manually on the anvil. Look around at it, sight down it, correct, and back in for one more finishing heat. Here we are last time with the press for this weld and draw sequence. Getting the sides all tuned up even so I don't waste anything restacking it on top of itself. Trying to get it nice and flat so I don't have to grind off a lot to get a flat scale crease surface. Scraping scale off there on the edge of my die holder, I do that a lot. I'm finished flattening by hand a little bit for the last time on this run through the forge and dies. And I believe that'll about do it for that. Nice and straight, flat. We'll set it aside, let it cool, and next thing will be sectioning it up for the restack. And back over at the welding bench, got that handy piece of angle iron and a vise. Set the bar down on it. I've already set myself up with this ruler that I made with a piece of bar stock and a tape measure. You can use it to measure stuff hot. Anyway, I'm marking a little bit at each end for waste, so you don't want to use that stuff that's got a weld bead in it. And now I'm measuring the entire bar and dividing by the number of pieces I want. And I'm going to mark that out to make sure it works. Using soapstone on the correct edge of the billet, that's going to allow me to sight down at it with the chop saw blade before the cut. I'm going for 4 pieces here, 4 times 13, that's going to be 52 layers when it's stacked back on top of itself. Take it over to the chop saw. Always flip the guard up and actually sight down the blade carefully so you know you're hitting your mark. Right now I'm just trimming the very end of the billet off so I know I've got clean steel. Unclamping it, I move it over, sight in that first cut. Now I'm setting the depth stop, keep that length, and I'll just keep shoving the bar over to the depth stop and cutting it rather than relying on the marks, because I find this to be a much more precise way of making sure they're all the same length when cut. And of course I don't cut it off the handle, I want to keep the handle on there to build the rest of the billet on again. I like to grind outside whenever the weather is nice. That keeps that extra grit out of my shop, and I don't have to wear a respirator then to do that heavy grinding. I collect these heavy-duty old 7 and 9 inch angle grinders. This one's a Miller's balls, and it's got a big cupstone or snagging wheel on it. Very heavy abrasive grit, cuts right through that scale, makes quick work of this part. I can do this on the surface grinder too, but on a nice day I'll opt to just do it outside with the snagging wheel. I'm going to get all of the scale off. And try to make it nice and flat so you don't have a whole lot of gaps or inconsistencies in the matchup with the next piece. Since I have 4 pieces, 2 of those pieces need both of the sides ground, and 2 of those pieces need only one side ground since they'll be the outside pieces. And I don't really try to grind them with any kind of a dome on them or whatever. I would if I was wet welding, but I'm going to use kerosene for restacks, so I don't really need to be squeezing flux out the sides of the billet. Stack them all together and take them inside and tack them up. I'm going to start with the scale side down and the ground side down. Put the handle, I like to put the handle in as one of the middle pieces. That way the billet doesn't want to flop over any more than I can help in the fire. It helps having the billet be somewhat balanced in your hands. Get everything lined up just so. Up, little tap-taparoo, everything square to everything else. Now we're MIG welding it up at the corners, putting nice stout beads on so nothing cracks in the fire. And voila, we've got a billet with a handle. We're going to put it in a little bit of kerosene and then back into the forge. But before we do that, let's go outside and see what it looks like out in my yard in my neighborhood on a absolutely beautiful mid to late afternoon in early July. Nothing but blue sky, pine tree, kids playing in the distance, my little old Yoda pickup, and our nice log home. Alright, after that nicely relaxing interlude, we are back at forge welding on the press. This is a kerosene weld, and I have just crushed it quite a bit all over to shut everything. On the second heat, that's a welding heat again. I'm welding it harder, beginning to draw it. Third heat, we're forging the edges some. And again, we're at a layer count of 52 now, which is the final layer count for this particular billet. And it's going to get stretched out to the right dimensions to build into the final billet with a different piece of a different layer count. We just want to get it all nice and straight-sided and flat and the right thickness at this point. Okay, and this is the final stack and draw. And we've got a middle piece now, which is 13 layers, and you can see that it's coarser. And the two outer pieces are the billet that we just built of 52 layers. What I didn't show was the building of that middle billet, and it's just like the building of the starting billet. You don't want to watch that twice, but it's just that much work. So I've inserted it into the middle. Our original billet is now the outside, so I've got 52 layers, 13 and 52. For 104 plus 13 is 117 total layers in the billet. Having welded it, we're beginning to draw it out. This was a kerosene weld. I noticed it opening up a little bit at the end, so I had to come back at it real hot, chomp it on the end, make sure it's stuck together. That worked out fine. You know, it worked out good if you forge the edges hard and it doesn't come back apart. Again, this is the final combined block of steel for the sword, and it creates a cooler pattern. If it has coarse layers in the middle, it creates kind of a variegated stripe. Now we're forging into a square. 1.125" square is what it turned out to be. Nice smooth square. If it's an uneven square section, it'll twist tighter in some places. We don't want that. And then I finish up the square section by knocking the corners back a little bit, so it's semi-octagon. That way it doesn't want to tear at the corners when you twist it real tight. I want to forge it round because I want to have the square to grab onto to twist, and I want to be able to see. Now we're over at the twisting machine that I built pretty recently. This is a 3-phase machine. It's forward, reversible, speed controllable, and I have it rigged with a foot switch so I can run it hands-free. This billet is 1.125" square, which is about the max it'll do in the chucks that I built for the ends. But even at that thickness, it really has the torque to put a heavy, fast twist into a square bar. And I still do it in several heats, so I can kind of begin twisting from the far end and then build it out in sections of even twist. And I like to do this at a high heat. Just cranking away at it. I'm pretty sure it would just shear the bar if I let it. Nice thing, it's got a bit of a slidable tailstock like a lathe, so I can just kind of shove it out of the way or shove it back onto the billet as necessary. The actual little collets are not interchangeable collets like some people use on these things. These are heavy square tube with nuts welded on and bolts in, so the bolts can tighten onto the end of the stock, but they don't need to be run down tight. They can just be roughly fitted to the stock. The stock grows a little bit in size when you heat it, so you don't want it tight anyway. And then you just smack the tailstock over and it's square enough to grip the end of the bar and not round it off when twisting it. And I want the pattern to be a very nice vertical twist, so I'm just taking the care to, as evenly as possible, twist it really good and tight. Vertical flutes. You know, a few twists per inch on this heavy bar. You can see I really need to reinforce the tailstock on that thing. With all the torque, it tends to want to bend up a little bit, so I'm going to add a welded-in gusset. I should add that it's not direct drive 3-phase motor. It's actually only a half-horse motor, but it goes through, I believe it's an 80-to-1 reduction box. So the finished full speed rating is something like 75 RPM or something. And here's the final phase of foundation forging for the steel for this sword. I borax it up, bring it up to a high heat, and forge weld it back square. This saves me quite a lot of actually grinding the corners off, and since I rounded them a little bit before twisting, they tend to just consolidate right back into the bar without leaving any cold shuts or open welds. I'm going to make it square first and then push the corners in a little bit octagon so it's been worked all over the surface. And then basically from there I just want to stretch it out widthwise on the power hammer a little bit and turn it into a rectangular cross-section block of steel. What I don't want to do a whole lot at this point is draw out the length yet, because I want to preserve the tightness and verticality of those twists that I just put in. And that's something that I aim to do throughout the later process of forging the sword. But at this point, at the end of this pressing sequence and a little bit of hammering, I end up with a really nice foundation forged bar to actually profile forge the Khopesh from. Power hammer with drawing dies in it does a particularly nice job with the combination of a welding heat and borax on the surface to really kind of planish the surface together and close up anything that might be open on it. That way I'm not going to have, a forged sword with flaws that I'm going to have to grind too far into to get out. And I just finish it up a little bit at this point with some hand hammering to get things straight. Thanks for watching all the grunt work with me, and next time we move to the more exciting and fun work of forging the profile of our sword. That'll be chapter 3.